Corey DeAngelis has a Ph.D. and he's the National Director of Research for the American Federation for Children. And he's been on the front lines of this fight for quite a long time now. I've shared a lot of his stuff. He joins me now to discuss. Corey, thank you so much for joining me. This is insane to me. This came in, I think, Thursday or Friday of last week. And you have the National School Boards Association saying, urging the administration to look into these parents that we've seen in videos from across the country where they're speaking up on legitimate issues with very legitimate concerns and objections about the material that is being presented to their students in class. Some of it, I think, is just downright abusive, if not just completely inappropriate. And so the response is the school board, I guess, is looking to get a return on the investment of their campaign dollars. And so they want to bring the federal government down, I guess, on parents and look at them as domestic terrorists. I haven't seen, Corey, correct me if I'm wrong here, I haven't seen at any point where parents have acted in any way that would classify them as such. What about you?
Yeah, this is absolutely bonkers. Crazy towns, as you said, I also like to call clown world. This is just clown world. Look, one of the main arguments for public schooling or government schooling for a long time has been that there's this form of democratic accountability through the democratically elected school boards. And now that families are finally figuring out that the school system isn't really working for them, they're going and fighting back at the school board meetings. And then once there's a little bit of pushback, those in charge are now saying that they're trying to use the strong arm of the government to silence these parents and to label them as domestic terrorists. This is absolutely bonkers. It just goes to show you that these forms of top-down accountability aren't real accountability. The only true form of accountability is bottom-up accountability, allowing families to vote with their feet. We should be pushing and channeling this anger towards school choice policies, allowing the funding to follow the child to wherever they're getting an education. Then and only then will these schools have true incentives to cater to the needs of families as opposed to the other way around. It's time to put parents in the driver's seat.
I think that's a really good point that you make about school choice, because I sometimes feel in the justified anger and in the objections to this, that point is sort of lost. Like, we could really be having an impact on an issue that has a huge amount of common ground, as I understand it, from a lot of people who vote Democrat. They would like to have that opportunity to send their kids wherever they would like to go instead of being just tied to one particular school. Do you feel like that we hit that enough in this discussion on parents versus school boards with CRT? I feel like we need to bring up school choice as much as we talk about the other stuff.
Yeah, because the Democrats don't want to talk about school choice. You look at the Virginia governor's race, McAuliffe doesn't really bring up education all that often. The one time he did bring it up during the debate, it kind of backfired on him because he prioritized protecting the system and the employees and the adults in the system instead of making it about the kids and the parents. And that was a problem for him. And if you look at 2016, when McAuliffe was a governor in Virginia before, he actually vetoed 3 school choice bills, but he sent his own kids to private schools. So we're labeling him as a school choice hypocrite because, look, he had educational freedom for his own family, and that's great. Every single family should try to find the best educational alternative for their children, but you shouldn't fight against other families from having those alternatives and opportunities, especially when forcing people into a one-size-fits-all system disproportionately has a burden on the least advantaged parents that can't afford to pay for private school tuition and fees. Virginia already spends about $14,000 or more per child per year. Why not allow that money to follow the child?
That amount is what, in many instances, that's more than what parents pay for private school tuition.
Yeah, nationwide, the average private school tuition and fees is only about $11,000 or $12,000, and nationwide we spend about $15,000 or $16,000 per kid per year, and that doesn't even count the stimulus bailouts from Congress over the past year, which is about $3,000 or $4,000 more per child in the 2021 school year because of all this the COVID relief funding that isn't actually being used for safely reopening schools.
I think if you were to ask a lot of parents, which I know you have, but if they felt as though they were getting for the investment of their dollars, a private school type of education for their children, since they're paying more than what they would pay in a private school, I would think a lot of them would say no, because there are so many parents in a lot of these public schools that have had to hire tutors, especially in districts that are very, very focused on CRT. What have you heard just from parents across the country, from where you are and what you do? What have you heard from folks on that?
Yeah, parents are fired up about school choice, right, in the past 18 months. The way that I put it is that COVID didn't break the public school system. It was already broken. And the past year has simply shined a spotlight on the main problem with K-12 education, which happens to be this massive power imbalance between the union monopoly and the individual families. So the latest Real Clear Opinion Research polling on this found a nationwide increase in support for funding students instead of systems by 10 percentage points, with 74% of Americans now supporting school choice. And the biggest jumps in support were among families that had their kids in the public school system, and Democrats as well are now overwhelmingly supportive of having the funding follow the child.
You know, going back to the whole looking at parents as, you know, maybe like domestic threats or something like this, or the way that the National School Board Association was suggesting this to the administration, do you really think that the administration would ever act and regard and with that treat parents who are objecting at these school boards in a very peaceful manner, I might add? Do you think that they would actually take action on this?
I mean, a year and a half ago, if you would have asked me this, I would have said no way in heck would this happen. But we're seeing a lot of government overreach by the federal government right now. So you never know with the mandates that are coming out from the Biden administration. So like the only way out of this, really all these fights over the past year and a half with the decision to reopen schools in person or not, the fights about curriculum in the classroom, the fights about masking or other mitigation strategies that are used in the classroom, they're all just symptoms of the larger problem, which happens to be we force low-income families to send their kids into a system that is a one-size-fits-all disaster. And the only way forward without force, and instead by embracing freedom and allowing for individual decisions for your own kids, is to fund the student directly and to empower families to make the best educational decisions for their own kids. Only then will we get out of this mess.